Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you.
Of all the people that listen to my show, I have to say you are pretty much my favorite. Let's get started.
Oh, don't you know, it's the Bill Arnold Show. It's Bill.
And a warm welcome to the Bill Arnold Show. I am looking forward to spending as much time as you have for me today. I've got Dr. Andy Schuttinga coming on in just a minute. If you do miss any of today's show, I'm going to recommend in advance you just go to the website and check out the podcast because it's going to be great content. I'm actually very excited to have Andy back on the show. He moved to Houston, Texas a while ago. But we're going to talk today about validation. You know, in Romans 12, verse 15, it says, "Rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn." And I think it's so important. Validation is so powerful, and it's oftentimes overlooked. And it's a gift that we give each other. And it doesn't mean that we're agreeing with everything, but it just means that I'm hearing you. I'm seeing you. Your thoughts and your feelings are important to me, and it's a big deal that I understand your perspective. And when people feel validated, they feel loved, even if you don't know what to do next. If you say, I hear you, I see you, and I understand to the best of my ability what you're going through, it gives people this incredible gift. Andy used to be a regular guest when he lived in the Twin Cities, but he's moved to Houston, and right now he is the chair of online psychology at Houston Christian University. Andy, so glad to have you back on.
Hey, it's great to be back. It really is.
Yeah. Are your parents listening in Colorado?
I doubt it because I forgot to tell them I was doing this today.
Well, we'll give you 30 seconds to call them if you want.
That would be that might be pretty fascinating radio, to be honest with you. But I think I'll tell them about the podcast, which they've listened to many times.
Yeah, I hope you do.
Oh yeah, for sure. Hey, Mom and Dad.
Validation is such a big deal because when you validate somebody, they feel like they're worth. I matter. Thank you. And I'm so looking forward to dissecting this subject today with you.
Yeah, it's a sneaky important thing that I've found over the years that some people are excellent at validation. Like it just comes naturally to them. They don't even think about it. They're just so good at, that's terrible. I feel so bad for you.
Mm-hmm.
Or, that makes total sense why you would feel that way. I completely get that. And then there's the rest of us who are not necessarily great at validation. And I'll be the first to tell you, this is something that I've personally been working on, trying to strengthen in my own life. And I'm not a natural validator. I'm more I had a terrible time today with this project. Oh, well, it couldn't have been that bad, right? My response is usually, how do we fix it? Or how do I convince you that your life isn't as hard as you're making it sound?
Yeah.
Which is totally invalidating.
That's a problem solver, though. You're trying to just do what you do. I'll help you solve your problem.
Yep. And sometimes that's what people want, and sometimes it is the exact opposite of what they want, or maybe need. It's a difficult balance because sometimes when you're in a work situation and someone says, "Hey, I've got this problem. It's really bothering me, and I'm not sure what to do." That may be an occasion where you just problem solve, because you might have to solve something quickly. You might have to resolve an issue between a couple of people quickly, and you don't really have time to deal with feelings because it may not warrant that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in a personal situation, a relationship situation, most of the time people don't really want you to immediately solve the problem. They want to be heard and validated for how they feel and what they're thinking.
Andy, let's talk about what validation is and maybe what it isn't. Because I know when you feel when you get validation, it does bring with it a certain level of emotional safety where you go, "Oh, thank you. You get it. You get me."
Yes.
and you can't solve their problem, but they feel understood to some degree, and
Yeah.
you feel like you matter. So that's a big deal.
It is. I mean, just that response alone. A lot of research has clearly shown that validation helps. It helps regulate emotions. It helps decrease arousal. It helps decrease stress because when we're amped up, we need something to help us kind of parachute down with that parasympathetic nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
the part of us that says, "Whoa, it's okay. We're gonna calm down." But sometimes we need help with that, and a validating statement allows it literally allows your brain a brief moment to say, "Okay, I'm not alone here, and what I'm feeling isn't crazy." I think that's a big one for a lot of people. They have a feeling, they have a strong emotion or a strong response to something, whether it's anger or fear or even super excitement. I mean, it could be anything. And when someone says, "I understand you," and I recognize that, and it's not weird, crazy, or maddening, that immediately makes you feel, "Oh, okay. I'm not I'm not crazy," or I have the right to feel this way, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm not wrong to feel this way. Now, validation is not necessarily agreement. I mean, validation isn't, "Yeah, you totally should feel that way." Um,
Mm-hmm.
because, someone, maybe they could be wrong. They could be incorrect. There could be a misunderstanding, but you can deal with that later as long as you upfront make it okay for a person to have those feelings in the first place. And I think that's really the key, is not necessarily saying, "Yeah, you should absolutely feel that way," or "You're right and I'm wrong," or "You're right and she's wrong or he's wrong." It's a lot more powerful to be able to say, "I see your feelings and I understand why you feel that way," or "I hear you and that completely makes sense why you would feel that way." And then maybe later you can say, "I have some thoughts about this situation. Would you like to hear them?" And then that opens up the door to have maybe a deeper conversation about what's going on or what happened or what's happening in the relationship that's might require some significant attention.
Mm-hmm. Andy, I've got this theory. I'll run it by you. And I know that
Hmm.
you are a psychology professor, so I think you've done some counseling work as well, correct?
Hmm.
But
Correct.
primarily a professor. So when somebody feels like nobody understands me, nobody gets me, why am I so frustrated? I can't figure this out. And then they go and see a counselor, and the counselor
Hmm.
sits and listens without interrupting them. And then when they're done, the counselor acknowledges their emotions and says, "I understand." And they go, "Finally, somebody gets me."
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah, isn't that the truth? And it doesn't take that much. It really doesn't. That's why, honestly, I think that's why sometimes therapy is so helpful for people, because when you're a couple or friends or coworkers, teammates, whatever, when you have a personal relationships that's based on your everyday or regular interactions, and there's in particular conflict between the two of you, um, one half of the conflict may not really appreciate hearing your feelings or
mm-hmm.
may completely disagree, and that complicates things, right? My response to someone might be, "Well, you shouldn't feel that way because I didn't mean it that way." Well, that's a terrible way to validate feelings.
I
That's
agree.
that's completely invalidating. Like, "Hey, I don't really care how you feel because you misunderstood the situation." And in all honesty, Bill, that may be true. They maybe did misunderstand the situation, but that's irrelevant because the person's feeling a certain way, and we have to recognize what that is. A therapist can just sit there and can be completely objective or maybe completely subjective and still have the ability to say, "Yeah, that's tough," or "I understand why you feel that way." In their head, they might be thinking, "Man, you have got this all wrong." But in person, it's really easy for
Mm-hmm.
them to just simply sit back and listen and take it and say, "Yeah, I can see why you feel that way," because there doesn't have to be a judgment there. And I think that's the challenge for us individually, is how do we allow ourselves to hear someone's true feelings without judgment? And
That's
that's
a big
very
one.
hard to do. I think And I think the closer you are to the person, the harder it is to be able to do that.
Yeah, because you've got a history with that person. Sometimes it's hard to
Yes.
suspend your history when you're hearing something for the 29th time.
Yes.
So then
that is 100% true.
instead of hearing and understanding, you're judging, and then the defenses stay nice and high. If I'm feeling judged,
Yes.
my defenses are up.
Yes.
If I feel
I
understood,
do the same thing.
defenses come down.
That's exactly right. And honestly, I believe that's the case for probably almost everybody in almost every type of situation. When we feel, it's so easy to feel attacked when you're hearing someone else's feelings, and it's hard to separate that from what might be true. You might, like a husband and wife might be saying, or a mom and a son, or a mom and a daughter, or whatever relationship, whether it's family or friends. Honestly, the example doesn't really matter. When you've got two people who know each other and have a relationship of some kind, and one is really upset about what happened between them, it's very hard for the person who's maybe the offender to just kind of sit back and take the emotional onslaught that they might be getting from the other person, because they might feel like, well, this is really unfair. Your feelings are unfair, and so we feel attacked, and we feel like, well, I have to fight back, and that's our natural tendency, because, like you said, we get defensive. Like when someone is saying, you're terrible at this, you were a terrible person, and you treated me terribly. Well, we're automatically going to say, well, obviously you think I'm a bad person, and I'm not. So I'm going to fight you. And it's really easy to go down that road.
Andy, would you say that most arguments sort of take on a higher escalation when the defensiveness is there and when someone doesn't feel understood? If you start with understanding, I think the conversations are always going to go better. And like you said, Andy, you don't have to agree. You just have to validate. Validation is the key.
That is exactly right. And it's and what's also easy to do is, like, it sounds like you feel terrible, or it sounds like you're upset with me, but you just killed it right there, right? It sounds like you're mad, but anytime you put that 3-letter word in there, you're invalidating what you're saying, and therefore you're invalidating what the feelings are. It's remarkably simple to talk about and put on a piece of paper. But for some of us, it's remarkably hard to practice every day, because each one of us, right, we have our own things that we're particularly defensive about. If you realize that you have a bad habit of doing something and people point it out, how many of us really like that? I mean, not too many. I don't know a lot of people who genuinely say to you, thank you so much for telling me about that huge flaw in my character. I deeply appreciate it. I've met a few people like that, and half of them are really honest about it, and half of them are just lying. Right? They don't really mean that. They're just being nice because they're trying to avoid conflict.
Mm-hmm. There's so many things you can say that would be invalidating if you tell me or describe something to me, Andy, and I go, oh, you're just overreacting. Or, oh, here comes the drama.
Yes.
Here comes the drama.
Yep. I think it's really easy. It's really easy to invalidate feelings. I'm very good at it. I've learned that over the years. I can be very effective at invalidating feelings.
And why is that?
And it's not intentional.
No, but why is that? Are you not comfortable with people's discomfort?
It depends. It's funny. If, let's say, okay, in my work life, a student comes to me and says, I'm really upset about what you said in class, and it really bothered me. I've had this happen before. Not a lot, but it's happened a few times. And in that situation, I realize I'm the person in power because I'm a professor and I have some level of authority over students. I grade their papers, and so I control a grade that they're looking for. And I have expertise, all the things that kind of not separate us, but, in that situation, there's a power dynamic, right? And so when you have a power dynamic, I find it personally easier to accept criticism or frustration from a student like that, because I have to kind of care for them in terms of, well, I have to be the adult, right? I have to be, I have to be on top of this situation. And so it's easier to say, oh, I can see why you feel that way. Sure. Let's talk about it some more. Why don't you tell me what you're really feeling here? Why don't you tell me what I said that made you upset? And then we can have a conversation about that. But when you're two people on a personal level, that takes on a very different dynamic. And for myself, I feel like here's a hole in my game, right? In my personal game, I feel like I have to defend myself because I believe I might be right. And I think I'm not the only person who does that. I think a lot of people immediately feel like, well, you're wrong and I'm right. And that's not what validation is about. It's not about right or wrong. It's about recognizing and accepting that someone else is upset or hurt or angry or sad, and dealing with it that way. A great example that was given to me. I did not come up with this myself. This is actually my wife's example. She's like, when you validate someone, you may have, here's an example. You might be riding your bikes together and you accidentally cut in front of your friend or whatever, and they crash their bike. They fall off their bike, they skin their knees, they're bleeding, not a serious injury, but enough of an injury that you're like, oh, geez, that was terrible. The one thing you're going to do in that situation is not say, hey, I didn't mean to do that. That wasn't my fault. You should have hit your brakes. Like, what were you doing? Most of us, 95% of us, are going to go immediately deal with the hurt, right? We're going to stop the bleeding. We're going to pick up the bike. We're going to help the person up and say, are you okay? I am so sorry that I did that, but let's deal with this first. And you might be thinking in your head, that really wasn't my fault. Who cares?
Doesn't matter. Nope, doesn't matter.
The person's hurt, and you have to deal with it.
All right.
And that's what you do first.
Yeah. We're going to take a break, come back, more with Dr. Andy Schuttinga. If you have a question or comment, as we're talking about validation today and how important validation is. And just a reminder, once again, validation is not the same as approval. But when you hear someone's fear and or someone's disappointment, and you just live with them in the moment and give them that understanding and that validation, it helps tremendously. But if you have a question or comment, the text line is open, 877-933-2484. Andy and I will be back in 90 seconds. It is my deepest desire that you take the very first step of faith by placing your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. If you've got questions about what it means to begin a relationship with Jesus, text the word faith to 41224. I'm back with Dr. Andy Schuttinga. We're talking about validation today, so thank you for joining the program. I want to validate you for tuning in. So, Andy, in James chapter 1, verse 19, it encourages believers to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. So I'm pretty convinced listening is a pretty important piece of the validation.
Listening is so incredibly important to relationships. And everything from I just met you to, we've been married for 60 years and we can't hear very well, but we're still listening, right? I mean, it really is the key, I think, to excellent relationships at whatever level relationship that we have. It's just learning how to listen. And the key to that is, of course, not thinking ahead of what you're going to say next. It's just listening and processing what the other person is saying. I think that's what the Bible verse is talking about, being quick to listen and slow to speak. We don't, in our fast-paced world with, we have smartphones and Zoom and Teams and all these different things that we can use to connect so quickly. There's like pressure, I think, on us to talk fast, to get to the point, to have a response immediately, when really good conversations are the ones that are slow and thoughtful and deeper, because you have the time to listen, to process, and then formulate a response.
One of the things I try to do on this show is I say to myself, has my guest completed their thought? Have they come to a conclusion
Yeah.
with their thought? Because it's really easy to interrupt because stuff comes into your head and you go, ooh, I'll jump in right now in the conversation. But if you can listen without planning your response, I think you're going to have an advantage when it comes to hearing, understanding, and validating. Your thoughts?
I think that's exactly right. Um, when you were talking, I immediately had this memory of getting a report card as a kid. And it said something along the lines of, Andy is a blurter. He needs to learn how to not talk so much and be slower to speak. And of course, my parents pulled out the Bible and went right to James and, uh, the good teaching. Thanks, mom and dad, for that. And it took years to figure that out, right? It like years. I didn't learn that in third grade. I learned that probably when I was in my 30s, to just stop talking and be quieter and listen carefully and let the other person continue. I've become a much better conversationalist over the last 20 years because I taught myself, like you just said, not to be a radio host all the time, but to kind of be that way, to kind of look at conversations as almost you're interviewing somebody for an interesting paper you're going to write about them. So you let them, if you want to know something about someone, you ask them a good question and then you'll give them time to answer it, right? Instead of thinking of the next one. I hate conversations where they rapid fire question you and you're barely done with one answer and they're peppering you with another question. I don't think that's listening. That's fact gathering, which is a totally different story.
Right. Andy, would you say your tendency is to ask curious questions or to start making assumptions?
Ooh, that I do both.
Okay.
But I think that's partly because of the nature of my background is when I meet somebody, I immediately start probably paying attention to and noticing things that maybe a lot of other people wouldn't, because I'm looking for clues and cues into what this person is that I'm talking to. And we've only been down here for almost a year now. So I meet new people to me all the time. And I find myself doing that right away. I'm observing and listening for things and watching them as much as I am asking questions. And so I do naturally make some assumptions about people. But then if I catch myself doing that, I try to ask them questions that will either, no pun intended here, validate or invalidate my assumptions. And I think when we're able to do that, it allows us to get to know a person more quickly and at a deeper level than if we're only relying on assumptions than we see. So like if you meet someone at church, you see them across a couple of aisles, there's that time in church, meet and greet your neighbors, and you go around. And if someone approaches us, I have to be careful not to do that, not to just make assumptions based on how they're dressed or how they're walking or how old they are or young they are, whatever, but just kind of let it kind of unfold and then be able to ask curious questions. And, I think everyone can have their own set of things that they really want to know about people besides what do you do, where are you from, and what do you think about the weather?
Mm-hmm. When I think of Jesus stepping into people's place, wherever they might be, I always go to John chapter 11 when Mary and Martha are trying to process Jesus arriving late, Lazarus is dead, and he gives two very different responses. To Martha, it's, I'm the resurrection and the life. And to Mary, one of the shortest verses in Scripture was Jesus wept. And I thought, am I willing to be like Jesus? I know that he loved Lazarus, so he was sad himself, but he stepped into Mary's pain with her. And he knew what was going to happen next, but he still felt that emotion, and he stepped into her pain with her. And I bet it was enormously validating for Mary in that moment.
Oh, had to be.
Yeah.
I mean, here you've got the Son of God who is acknowledging you in a very raw and horrible situation, right? And she was probably mad too. Like, one of them was mad. Where were you? Like, you could have done something.
Right.
I'm disappointed in you. And he didn't, notice he doesn't get defensive. He's like, look, lady, I can do anything I want. it'll be fine. Chill out. That's what a terrible response that would have been, right? The Bible would have been very different had Jesus acted like we do for all the things that people asked him and bothered him about. But it really is telling in that moment. What does he do? He cries with them. He shares their sorrow. And we can't always do that effectively. Sometimes people will tell us things that are horrible, that we just can't empathize with. If you've never lost a parent or a sibling to death or abandonment, you can't completely put yourself in their shoes. If you talk to a victim of levels of abuse that are above and beyond what people would consider mild or heavy abuse, like, so if someone is sexually assaulted, I can't completely empathize and say I know how you feel, because I don't.
Right.
There's no possible way to know that. And so we have to be careful that we're not falsely empathic with people, and say, oh, I'm sure that's horrible. I mean, that yeah, you can say that, of course, and that's not a terrible thing to say. But it's also okay to say, I have no idea how you feel, but it must be hard, and I'm here for you. Right? That's a way to validate someone without trying to kind of appropriate their emotions for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Andy, if you're going to go through any change in life, and if I was trying to encourage you to change something in your life, and I was a trusted friend, and you were seeking my input, if I allowed you to feel understood and accepted for where you were at that time, that would create a safe space for you to grow, wouldn't it?
I think it would. Yeah. Because you're opening up a door of non-judgmental assistance. And I think that's a hallmark of real friendship and trust to be able to do that. And it also shows care for someone to say, I see you doing something that's hurtful to other people or to me, or it's hurtful to you. When you do X, maybe when you treat people like this, here's what happens. And I don't know if you see that or not. When you come at them from the angle of understanding how they might feel, I think that can be a very powerful way to open up doors for people to have new understanding of themselves.
And can't you just keep teasing out with more questions? Help me understand this a little bit better. And that's not a threatening question. That's an invitation to say more. And sometimes the more someone can say, the more perspective they get. And they will then, I believe, say, thank you for listening. Do you have a perspective that you'd like to share on this situation?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And to add to that is we never want to go, I shouldn't say never, but we generally don't want to tee it up so that we get to say our point later, right? You never want to go in and be like, I'm going to let you share all your feelings so that I can share mine too, right? It's not quid pro quo. We're like, well, you get to say 5 bad things about me, so then I get, okay, now it's my turn. That also is an invalidator of everything that was said, because now you're just letting them know, I gave you your chance to speak so that I can have my turn. And that's never going to go well. Like if you're having a disagreement with somebody or conflict with them, you might want to save your part for later. That might be a different conversation at a different time, instead of kitchen sinking and be like, well, if you're going to bring all this stuff up, then I'm throwing my stuff in too. And we're just going to fight about a whole pile of stuff at the same time. And that's a less effective way to get things done with other people.
And Andy, I would say validation and trust are side-by-side companions.
I think that's absolutely true. Because if someone's invalidating your feelings, why would you trust them? Yeah,
there is emotional safety there,
right? They're clearly telling you your feelings don't matter, really. It's and I've done this. Like I know this from both sides. Everyone can say, well, I've had my feelings invalidated many times, but it's also important to recognize when we do it too. I mean, I know that I've done this. I've been told that. And it's a terrible feeling to know that you do that.
All right, you got me thinking. So I'm going to take a short break because that's what we do around this time of the hour. And then when I come back, I got a bunch of stuff because I'm going to take this validation and apply it in everyday life with lots of people who are difficult, especially people who have found themselves drifting into sin or drifting into disobedience or drifting away from God. So if you have a question or comment, the text line is open for you. Please send your thoughts over to 877-933-2484. We'll be right back with Dr. Andy Schuttinga. My guest is Dr. Andy Schuttinga. He is the chair of online psychology at Houston Christian University. So glad to have him talking today with me about validation. And Andy, validation clearly one of the greatest forms of love because we're saying, I hear you, I see you, you matter. All that is great. But what if someone's wanting validation for some sinful behavior or lifestyle or fill in the blank? We're pretty much saying validation is not approval, but how do we give them this loving validation and maintain a healthy boundary?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that it's hard to do because nobody really wants to go find things about other people to tell them to stop doing. And when you have a relationship, if it's built on trust and mutual support, that might be a little bit easier, but it's still hard to do that. I think probably the best way is with so many things is just to be honest with somebody and be direct but to do that in a kind way. And, it could be something like, hey, I see that you've been doing X a lot more lately. Maybe they're drinking more, or maybe they've started using a substance of some kind, or we'll just stick with that example. Maybe you notice a friend has been drinking a lot more and it's maybe becoming problematic. Maybe you maybe pull them aside and say, hey, I've noticed this. Tell me more about that. What's going on? Is everything good? Do you feel like you're self-medicating? Do you feel like you're just needing to do this more? Like what's the cause for that? And you can approach that without being judgmental. And they might be like, well, what do you care? I'm like, well, I just noticed, and I just wanted to talk to you about it and see if you're okay. And if they say, you know what, I'm fine, I don't need your help. Okay, then maybe that's all you say for now. But clearly it's an issue. And you don't want to be immediately like, oh, I understand why you're frustrated with me because I'm asking. That's going to turn them off right away too. So we have to be careful with kind of over validating too. But you definitely don't want to be just saying, oh, I think that's great that you're doing these things that are really harmful to yourself. We definitely don't want to be doing that.
Andy, I'm thinking the validation thing probably goes back as early as childhood, where you either thought to yourself, I'm going to try to express myself and someone will understand, or I'm going to try to express myself and I'm going to be criticized or dismissed or told or corrected and told I was wrong. It seems that we're living in maybe one of those two camps.
I think that's true for many, many people, especially those who were undervalidated as kids. I think my professional opinion is that it's harder for people who are undervalidated when they grow up than people who were overvalidated when they grew up. Because if you grew up and nobody was telling you that you were good at something or good at anything, nobody told you positive things about you, how you were developing and changing, you're constantly going to be striving for that as an adult, or as particularly as a teenager. I think teenagers are especially vulnerable to those types of things when they're trying to trying to discover who they are and what they're good at, what their strengths are. If no one's telling them that, I mean, there's danger there in looking for validation in the wrong places. Like, hey, you're just like us. You're a drug user, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
you're just like us. You're a gangbanger. You're just like us. You're gonna sit in the back of class and screw around and not pay attention. And that's where kids find validation in those situations. Or maybe at work, maybe you're working with someone who's the same person. They're sitting in the back, messing around or causing problems because no one told them, you know what, if you would just pay attention and do your best, you'd be amazing at this job. But they're too busy looking for validations from people, through their laughter or through their, looks or nods or whatever. I think it's a real danger. And I think as parents and teachers and caregivers of younger people, we have to be vigilant that we are building people up and not tearing them down. And
Mm-hmm.
and there's always that. Sometimes in Christian communities, we're like, well, we can't let any heads get too big. You don't want people to get too full of themselves because that's not glorifying to God. And I think there's a danger in overdoing that and never validating people for what they're doing. Because validation isn't like, I think you're what you're getting at here is it's not just individual, I'm validating your feelings, but we also look for validation for, am I a good and valuable person in society? Do I have skills and talents that are usable in different places? And if we don't have anyone telling us that,
Mm-hmm.
man, that's tough. That's really tough.
Well, nobody did it better than Jesus. And I think of the woman at the well. I loved that. I love that passage. He didn't start with condemnation. He didn't say, "Well, look at you're on your sixth man. You've had 5 husbands, and the one you're with now, you're not married to." He started just engaging in conversation, and he listened and he asked questions. And then at that point, then he just revealed to her that he knew what was going on in her life. And then he invited her to drink from this living water that only he can offer. And that's when she started to be transformed. Or you look at Bartimaeus, the blind beggar. His friends are yelling at him, "Leave him alone. Stop yelling." And Jesus stopped because the creator of the universe stopped because one desperate guy needed help.
Yeah.
And
he asked for it, right? He was kind of bearing his soul saying, I need your help. Somebody help me.
Yes.
And if we say, hey, pipe down over there.
Yeah.
Again, you would never do that to somebody who just crashed their car. I mean, if you see a car accident and you're there and you stop, you don't get out and say, can you move so we can go?
Right. No.
You say, how can I help you?
Amen.
Do you need help? Or now sometimes, we have people on a sidewalk who say, I need your help. Can you give me some money? Okay. I don't think validation of them is just saying, here's $20, just, go help yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole different thing. We could spend a whole hour talking about the philosophy of how to help people in those situations.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Well, when you think of Bartimaeus, I mean, he gets to Jesus and then Jesus says, what do you want me to do for you?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that question because he's continuing to engage with Bartimaeus and he's giving him dignity. He's saying,
yes,
I'm going to validate you and you go ahead and tell me what you want me to do because you matter.
Yeah. It's like in Proverbs, the Proverbs 20 verse 5, the purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out, which is exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. So
we can pull things out of people and that can be incredibly validating.
Yeah. When you say to somebody, I understand that what you went through, your experience is real and whatever emotions you're having, they're making sense to you. Then you're validating somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had a mouse in your basement and you're standing on your washing machine because you're too chicken to do anything about it, I could say, that's a real experience, Andy. And
Mhm.
whatever emotions you have, they're making sense to you right now. So I'm going to validate those. I'm not going to say, oh, what kind of big baby are you? You're not going to take care of a
Right.
little mouse in your house. But
Exactly.
it's comforting to have that kind of validation where you're just saying, you matter, I'm with you, and I get it to the best of
Yeah.
my ability.
Like, oh, you're scared. You're scared.
Right.
And they will say, yes, I hate mice. I'm terrified of mice.
Yes.
You can say, okay, well, do you want my help? Isn't that so much more powerful than
It's
what are
kinder.
you
It's
what are you
kinder.
doing?
Yes.
It's just a mouse. I'll stomp on it. You'll never catch it doing that. Or I'll grab it. Well, good luck. You probably won't do that. But I can help you, right? Or just get over it, right?
Yeah.
There's so many ways we can invalidate people's feelings. Some of them are really obvious and some of them are incredibly subtle. But they all do the same thing, right? They take away the validity, the meaning of another person's feelings. And it's just an unhelpful way of doing life with other people.
Yeah. Don't we want to be around people that largely understand us, and that if we have an issue, we go to
Yes.
someone that we know will create emotional safety for us, that will help us in our time of processing whatever it is we're going through.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think that's part of why we're drawn to people who are like us, because we can almost sense that they've had similar experiences to us. And it doesn't take long to figure out if they have or not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've lived all over the United States and in different parts of the world, and it doesn't matter where you're at. People are the same. People are people, human beings. We're all created in God's image, so we're all the same on a lot of levels. But it doesn't matter where you're at. When you talk to people a little bit and you start to see those commonalities, you're drawn to them because you know they can understand me. They're going to understand what it's like to move to a new city, or what it's like to experience life, in another country, or life with 6 kids versus 1. People are drawn to similarities in others because it provides them with a very basic level of validation. Like, when you see someone who's experienced life like you, that in itself is validation, because you say,
I agree.
aha, see, I'm not the weird one. There's other people like me who understand what I've gone through, or understand what I may be going through right now. And I know I can rely on them. And hopefully they are empathic people who are good at validating your feelings.
Mm-hmm. All right, Andy, we're going to take one more break. When we come back, I want to talk about how validation is going to always reflect God's character, because that's what he is, who he is. So we'll be right back with Dr. Andy Schuttinga. If you have a comment, I see one just popped up here on the text line. We'll address that when we come back. 877-933-2484. We carry each other's burdens. Please know you can bring us your prayer concerns and we will pray. Share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio team by texting or calling 877-933-2484, or share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio staff and listeners at myfaithradio.com. We're talking about validation today with Dr. Andy Schuttinga, and I think of God's character. He didn't yell instructions down from heaven. He came personally, and he listened, and he wept, like we talked about in John 11:35, and he suffered, and he came into our world because he was going to validate the plan of salvation. And he was going to say, "This, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me." So when I think of this passage, Andy, out of Psalm 139, it says, "O Lord, you have searched me and know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You understand my thought from afar. You scrutinize my plan and my lying down, and are intimately acquainted with all my ways." That sounds pretty validating to me.
Oh, it's the ultimate validation, right?
I thought so too.
I know you inside and out.
Yeah.
I know all your thoughts and I know all your feelings. And it's truly amazing that we have a God that does that and still loves us, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the beauty of the gospel is we're all terrible sinners,
Yep.
and God knows it, and he knows all the sinful thoughts that we have that we never say out loud. I mean, can you imagine if we had like thought bubbles, like cartoon panels, what the world would be like? It would not be good.
No, it wouldn't be. So here's a question that came in on the text line. What do you do when you've been quick to listen, acknowledging someone's feelings, but they still attack and seek to create division, even though you try your best to resolve it?
Yeah, that's
not
tough.
easy. Yeah.
No, it's not. And I don't think we're called to just continually validate and never have anything to say about a situation. We can't just keep taking a beating. I know Jesus says turn the other cheek, but I don't think that just means getting slapped back and forth over and over again either. I think in those situations, it's probably good at some point to let the person talk and vent, and then maybe in the moment, maybe it is okay to say, hey, look, I appreciate you sharing your feelings with me, and I'm glad I know how you feel. Is there room for me to have to share some of my thoughts with you? I think that's okay. It's still invitational. You're saying, is this okay with you? You're invited them to have a conversation rather than a monologue that goes one way. And if they're like, no, I'm not interested in hearing what you have to say or how you feel at all, that's a signal that this is a relationship that has a problem,
Mm-hmm.
and might need some deeper levels of help.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not what a good friend does. That's not what a good family member does, is just continually attack. There has to be some level of give and take in response there.
Andy, we all want to be fully known in this life by someone. That would be nice. I think that's kind of a person's heart, that somebody fully knows them. God fully knows us, but then we're created in his image. So there's that certain desire to be fully known. But then there's also that little tiny fear that is in the back of your head that says, but if people really knew me, I'm not sure they would love me. So that could be another way to feel disconnected.
Absolutely. I think that's true for a lot of people. They will hold others at a certain length away from them because of that fear. If they really truly know me, no one would be my friend. And I think on one level, we could all say that about ourselves. We're all broken, sinful people. And I don't want everybody to know all my thoughts and feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason I don't share all my thoughts and feelings, because I maybe recognize that if I shared all my thoughts and feelings, I would make a lot of people upset. Or I would come across as being selfish. And then sometimes we have to look at those feelings of our own and say, well, wait a minute, should I really be feeling these things? Right. And that's a topic for a whole nother show, about the things that we talk to ourselves about, we tell ourselves, the things that we feel we're deserving of, which may not be true.
Mm-hmm. Well, God certainly knows every moment of our lives. He knows what motivates us. He knows our fears. He understands and knows our desires, and he gets us when we're confused, when we're in despair. Boy, we have the perfect Savior, who also is the perfect friend and the perfect listener. And if we don't take full advantage of the gates of heaven being open to every conversation we have, we aren't fully using God's beautiful ears, and we need to talk to him all the time.
That's right.
All right.
He's never going to invalidate our feelings.
No, that's true.
Just not his nature.
All right, Andy, great to have you back on. Thanks for doing the show today. Have a great rest of your day.
Pleasure to be back.
Thanks. Dr. Andy Schuttinga has been my guest. That wraps up our show for the day and for the week. Thank you for supporting Faith Radio. See you next week.
Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.